Gospel according to St. John, the 13th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "One who has bathed does not need to wash except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. That is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, servants are not greater than their master, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And as I said to those outside, so now I say to you, where I am going you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another." I'm with Peter. It's not right. Things are upside down. Even not fully knowing who Jesus was, Peter had an inkling that there was no way Jesus should be washing Peter's feet, a job reserved for the lowest slave in the household. The newbie, the recruit, the one who had to learn the ropes, the one who couldn't argue, they had no seniority, no tenure. They had to do the dirty job, and believe me, feet in those days were dirty. They were dusty from the road. All people wore were sandals, not as clean as today. But still, feet, who wants to touch feet? Feet bear the weight of the body, and sometimes the weight of the soul. They're nasty sometimes. Feet, to get close enough to wash them with your hands and then dry them with a towel tied around his waist. This is wrong. And yet Jesus says it's right. And I find myself in an emotional dilemma. Like Peter, do I let him wash my feet? Do I refuse and lose my share in him? Do I make him go the whole way and wash all of me? I'm with Peter. I don't know what to do until I understand Jesus' words over and over. Did you hear how many times he used those words on this night before his crucifixion, knowing that he had already been betrayed, sending Judas out himself, setting into motion the inevitable hours of the next day? Did you hear how many times he said, "Love, I love you, the Father loves me"? share this love. I'm giving you an example. This is how you live. In service. No matter how humble or humiliating or degrading, you do what people need you to do, because that's what love demands. It's a commandment, not an option. It's a way of life, not a pastime, not a hobby. It's what marks us off as Christians, that we follow Jesus in this life of love. Sometimes that means washing feet. Sometimes that means feeding hungry people. Sometimes that means speaking to those who are poor and homeless. Sometimes that means tolerating the person who gets on our nerves so much that we'd really rather kill them than wash their feet. And yet Jesus gives us an example. What do? We take the risk. We become vulnerable to this vulnerable God who created the heavens and kneels before his disciples, who has the power of life and death and gives up his life, again, in love. It's a risk, but it's a risk worth taking, a vulnerability worth experiencing. We don't want to lose our share. We want to surrender to this Jesus. We believe his words. We follow his example. And we know that he needs us. We are part of this company of the faithful. And though we sometimes waver and go back and forth, sometimes feel strong in our faith and sometimes weak, sometimes we have the answers and sometimes only the questions, we know that little depends on us and all depends on Jesus, who will go that extra mile, give himself for our sake. Lord, give us our share with you. Forgive us where we've resisted or been afraid. Make us new. Wash us clean as you have done in the waters of baptism. Every day, make us your own and help us to follow your example.